some of these, I'm going to ask you to write down what you think it says, and then we can talk about it. Now, I know you don't want to write the wrong thing on your paper, or some of you, it may not bother you, but some of you are terrified and you don't want to do that. So you can get a marker if you want and write it on the table, and then we can make sure we get it, and then we can move on if you would rather do that. Okay, if that's less threatening to you, I'm totally fine with that. All right. Do y'all have enough markers? Yeah? Okay. You don't have to, but it's up to you. So, on the number 1, I want you to write out an equation. That's all I want you to do, because then we'll make sure it's right, okay? Write out an equation. I just want you to read it. Write down what you think it says, and then I'll talk you through how to read this and why, and I won't make you stand up and holler out your answer or anything either. Okay, do we all have at least any, I just write the equation. That's it. Let's make sure it's right before we do anything else is what I want to do. Okay. All right. Now, here's what I want you to remember. English is a language, math is a language, Spanish is a language, and all we're doing is translating from one to the other. If you translate between English and Spanish or English and French or whatever, doesn't the words sometimes seem backwards? Okay? Well, English is the one that's backwards. Spanish is not backwards. French is not backwards. Math is not backwards. English is backwards. Okay? And I'm going to show you what I mean by that and where some mistakes come in here. All right, so let's just walk through this a little bit slowly here. So it starts with the product of 7 and a number. Okay? And then there's a comma. What does product mean we do? Multiply. And so your number, you could have used n, you could use x, you could use whatever you want. I'm just going to use x. If you used n, totally fine. So product of 7 and a number, and there's a comma there. Then it says increased by 3. If there wasn't a comma, then it might be a number, 7 times a number increased by 3, right? But it's 7 and a number, that's the product, increased by 3, which means we add 3. We all good on that part so far? All right. Is, this is a big one. Is in math means equals. Anytime you see is, it means equals. That can help you. Then equal to twice, even if it doesn't say equal, if it just says is. Equal to twice the number, so same number. I literally just said I was going to use x, and then I used n. Don't ask me what my brain does. So I'm going to continue because it's the same number. 2 times n. Then it says subtracted from 39. Well, I probably shouldn't have put my 2n right there, right? Equal to twice the number subtracted from 39. Well, I could put, it's not minus 39, right? It is going to be that 2n is supposed to be subtracted from 39 like this, okay? Does that make sense? Now in that one, the way they worded it was very, very nice because it wasn't necessarily backwards like some of the other ones are. Any questions about why this is what it is? All right, so now if you use x, it's totally fine, whatever. And then go ahead now and solve this. We've been solving equations. You should be able to do this. And you can do this on your paper. Solve it on your paper. I think you can solve it. Because I do want this written on your paper so that you have that. I got n equals 4 or x equals 4. Now, one of the things I usually don't do up here because I feel like sometimes it's just too much, and I know some of you will do and some of you don't, and that's fine. Like actually write the minus 2n and the minus 3 like that, and then over 4. You should know at this point whether you need to do that or not. I'm not encouraging you to necessarily skip it if that's the way you've always done it. I mean, I always encounter people that have very, very good algebra skills, but they are not going to skip a step at all. And it's probably one of the reasons they usually get everything right. So, all right, everybody okay with that? Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing with number 2. I want you to write out what you think it says. You can do it with the marker. See what we've got. Good. I see A, I see N, I see X. Any of that is fine. All right, do we all have something written? All right, so let me show you. I do not want you to do what I'm about to do, okay? Because when I say, that this is translating, here's what I see sometimes, and here's what I mean by it's backwards. If I'm going to just try to translate word by word, then I would have 5 less than twice a number is equal to, and then go from there, okay? You see how that's 5 less than twice a number, right? But that's not what's actually happening, right? So we have to be careful with that. This 5 less, if I'm going to have 5 less of something, what am I doing with that 5? Subtracting it, right? If I have $5 less, I subtract the $5, right? So 5 less is really a minus 5. Than means that you kind of flip it around, and then twice the number. So that means I can have 2n minus 5, because the than tells me to kind of switch it around, is, so that's equals, even if the word equal isn't there, 1/2 the difference of 3 times the number and 13. Okay, so here's where we have to decide, is it 1/2 of 3 times something, but it says 1/2 the difference of, so this tells me it's 1/2 of 2 things that I'm doing what with? What does difference mean I'm going to do? Subtract. So I'm going to have 1/2 times the 1/2 the difference of, so 1/2 of means multiply, 3 times the number, and 13. And it said difference right here, minus 13. Okay? Everybody okay with that? Do you understand why the minuses go where they go? If there's no different stuff, then the pluses, if you get them mixed up, usually are okay. All right, everybody okay with that? Any questions? All right, so go ahead on your paper, write this down and solve this. I think you can do this just fine, I hope, because y'all were doing well on the other thing. And don't look up here until you're actually done, because if your process was a little bit different, that's okay, as long as the answer in the end is the same. It's fine either way. All right. Any questions? Do we get negative? Any questions at all? Don't be afraid to ask. And if I'm going too fast, tell me, because if some of you are still writing. All right. So now on number 3, I want to do the same thing. I want you to write down what you think it says. You don't have to show anybody. This is just for you, because I want you to see what your brain said it was and what it really is, and hopefully they're the same thing. But if not, I want to make sure you're making the connection. I don't want to just tell you what everything is and why. So write it down in the, oh, I'm sorry, were you still over there? What happened here? Let me spend 5 minutes to make a mistake. Oh, you know what you did? Look, when you multiplied both sides by 2, you missed that 5.
Oh.
Yeah. So one thing, and I was looking back at my work. Let's just back up to this real quick. What I actually did when I did it the first time is when I was here and I multiplied both sides by 2, I put 2 times 2n minus 5 equals 3n minus 13. And then I did that. And that might be safer because one of the things with clearing the fractions is forgetting to do every single term, and that'll just kill you every time. And you're not the only one, I'm sure. I mean, I'll make that mistake too. It's just a mistake. Okay, we all good with that? All right, so go ahead and try and write out what number 3 is. You want me to take that from you? Mm-hmm. And if you don't even know where to start or what to do, that's okay. I want you to try something, and if you're like, I don't even know, then there's different ways to do this. And I do it one way, and then when I was checking my answers, like the work that this lady had out, I was like, I don't know that I'd want to teach it that way. So I double checked with a couple of my colleagues, and I was like, all right, if you have this question, how are you going to teach this? And they were doing the same thing I was. I was like, that makes me feel better, because I thought maybe I don't know. The other ways, to me, it seems more confusing. Okay, so we have one number is 9 more than twice another number. So now we have 2 numbers, right? So if we want to be fancy, we could have n sub 1 and n sub 2, but that stuff looks yucky. So we could just also use x and y, all right? So one number, which will make that one number x, is means equals. 9 more, which means I'm going to add 9, right? Then means I'm going to flip it around twice the another number. So this is one number, then I have another number. So x equals, that's going to be 2 times the other number plus 9. Do we see how that came out of that first sentence? One number is 9 more than twice the other number. So than just kind of means you don't have to flip them around. It can be 9 plus 2y, but with the negatives, sometimes that just makes more sense for you. Okay, everybody okay with that sentence? All right, so then we move on. If the sum means we do what? Add. Of numbers is 129, so that means x plus y equals 129. We're going to find both numbers. All right, now, and if you do it the other way, which I'm not going to show you because it kind of confuses me sometimes too, and plus you're not going to write down some of the stuff you're supposed to, I know, then you technically don't end up with 2 different variables, but I think that gets confusing as well. Because we have 2 different variables, if I have 2 variables in 2 equations, that is officially called what? Can anybody tell me? They're dirty words to some of you. System of equations, okay? But it's not that big of a deal. Because with systems, which we will talk about more in depth, because that was one of the things that y'all had asked for, plus we're going to do more with word problems with those, is that a substitution or elimination, either one. This one, to me, is set up good for what kind, would you think? Substitution or elimination? Anybody? Bueller? Substitution? Good. Because it's solved for a variable. So I'm going to take this, since this is equal to x, I'm going to substitute it in where x goes right there. So that means I'm going to have 2y plus 9. And we're substituting in something with more than one variable. I want you to get in the habit of always putting that in parentheses. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time you don't know when you start. Okay? And then I still have a plus y equals 129. All right, now, do those parentheses really affect the question at all? No, it's just grouping something. So then we can move on from here. 2y plus y is 3y plus 9 equals 129. We subtract 9 from both sides. 3y equals 120. So y equals what? 40. Good. And it said find both numbers. Okay? So now that I have this, I have to find the other one. And when I do that, I can substitute this back into either one of these. Does not matter which one. Which one would you rather substitute it into? The first or the second? The first, okay? So the first just straight up gives you x. So x is equal to 2 times y, which is 40, plus 9. What's 2 times 40? 80, so this is 89. And there's my other one. Okay? So substitute it back into whichever one you think might be a little bit easier. If you can avoid negatives, so forth and so on. Okay? What questions we got? All right. So now I'm going to have you try in 4. Now I'm going to tell you on 4 you're going to have to get 3 equations. And what I would do on this is you've got Kara, Greg. Oh, is it just Kara and Greg? Oh, never mind. It's just Kara and Greg. I thought I was on a different one. I'd use a K and a G for Kara and Greg. That way I know which is which in case it matters. So see if you can write out those equations. Just write out your equations. And let's see what's happening here. Okay, so Kara's golf score was is just a different form of is. So Kara's golf score was or is 1 less, so that's that -1. Then means I'm going to flip it around, so I'm going to have a -1. 3/4 of Greg's, so 3/4 times G. So Kara's golf score is 1 less than 3/4 of Greg's. Plus, once you write it, if you go back and reread it and think about what the little equation means, you can make sure it makes sense there. If the sum of their scores was 153, that means K plus G equals 153. Oh, that's a 3. 153. And see, in this case, I only want Kara's. So if I'd have put like an X and a Y, you could say X equals Kara and Y equals Greg, but there's no need to do any of that. And we really just need Kara's, but either way at the beginning it doesn't necessarily matter. Okay? Everybody good with this? Questions? All right, let's work through this one together. Now, I do think that on the TSI or on the SAT, if you had to do this question, they would allow you to use the calculator because the number is big. However, we're not going to, so we can talk about some number sense stuff. All right? So when I go through this, I'm going to have would you say substitution again? Take this, put this in here for this case. So I'm going to get 3/4 G minus 1, and that's in parentheses, plus G equals 153. Now, I saw some of you when you were working on these, you're not afraid of fractions, which is fantastic, and you were combining things without clearing the fraction, and that's 100% fine, and that's actually very good. But I'm going to continue to kind of work through how can we clear the fractions for those of us that are still fraction phobic. Okay? So in this case, again, do the parentheses really have anything to do with this? No. So this I'm going to leave 3/4 G plus G, and then that minus 1 I'm going to add over here, and that's going to equal 154. Okay? And I forgot my G there. And I didn't combine them. Well, crap. Just because I'd have to combine fractions, which, again, eventually we are going to talk about some fraction stuff. But I also want you to know how to clear them. But you might realize every time you try to clear it, you forget to multiply by everything. So that's not what you should do. Maybe you should do something else, right? So if I'm going to clear this, what do I multiply through by? 4. Okay, so I'm going to multiply everything through by 4. When I multiply this by 4, I'm going to be left with 3G plus 4G equals 154. Now, again, we don't have to do it in our heads, but you could if you could double it and double it again. Or maybe you have to come off to the side and do 154 times, oh, I can't even write it correctly, times 4. But what I would do is think about it as having like $1.54. And if I doubled that, I'd have $3.08. And then if I doubled that again, I'd have $6.16 because you get 616. But as long as you can find it the right way, whatever. That's kind of a big number to kind of do those little tricks on if you're not comfortable with it. But so this is equal to 616. Everybody okay with that? What's 3G plus 4G? 7G is equal to 616. And we're like, well, this is a big number. I don't know if it's divisible by 7, and I hope so because I'm pretty sure my golf score has to be a whole number, right? So then we also would have to just do old school division, right? I know 9 times 7 is 63. What's 8 times 7? 56, right? So if I put an 8 here and I get a 56, then this is going to be 56. And oh, look, it's 88. So Greg's score is 88. Frustratingly enough, we didn't even care about Greg's score because it asks us to find Karen's score. Now which one you want to substitute it back into? The first or the second? I would go with the second here, absolutely, because we could avoid the fraction. And I know you probably don't have a ton of room. Sorry about that. But we're going to do K plus 88 equals 153. So Karen's score, 153 minus 80 would be 73 minus 8, 65. Is that what y'all got? That's what I got. Again, I'm pretty confident you would get to use a calculator on those, but we need to practice that kind of stuff sometimes too. What questions you got? All right. Y'all write out number 5. See if you can. One thing I don't know about the TSIA, and I will find out, is formula chart wise. Like on the SAT, they do have a little formula chart where it gives you like area and perimeter. I think it even gives you trig ratios, things like that. I'm not sure about the TSIA, but this is hopefully something we could do without that. All right, so let's look at this. Length of a rectangle is, okay, so L is 1 more than, so that's plus 1 after something. 1 more than 4 times its width. Do we agree with the first one? Yes. Okay. Then it says if the perimeter of the rectangle is 62 meters. All right, so there's a couple of different perimeter formulas that have been on your formula charts. One, I think you're probably more confident with others. But if you're like, I don't even remember what that formula is, do you know what perimeter is? How do you find the perimeter of anything? Add up all the sides, right? So if you at least know that, then you go, all right, well, I know in a rectangle, I got this, right? And so that means that 2 lengths and 2 widths, when I add them up, that gives you your formula. So 2 times the length plus 2 times the width equals, so it says the perimeter is 62 meters. There are your 2 equations. Okay, you see how that works? And it says find the dimensions, which means we want length and width. Go forth and find. I would say substitution again would be a good. So we're still just going to do substitution. This whole thing is equal to the length, right? So we're going to take that and substitute it in where L goes right there. Okay? Does that make sense? And remember, we're substituting something in with more than one term. We put it in parentheses. Do the parentheses matter here? Here, absolutely they matter, right? That's why we want to practice that. And so that's a very common mistake to forget to do that. So we don't want to forget to do that. Check yourself with me when you're done. Y'all said you had all kinds of problems with word problems. You don't seem to be doing too terribly bad. And we'll get, I know there's lots of types of word problems. We'll get into some of the others. We are not going to do 6 because it talks about the area of a trapezoid and stuff, and we don't need to get into all that, I don't think. We're just going to skip that one. I just don't think it's, I don't want you to be lost in the trapezoid stuff and not be able to figure out everything else. Okay? All right. Let's look at 7. The measure of one angle is 6 more than half the measure of another angle. So again, we got 2 angles, so I'd probably use X and Y. If the angles are complementary, find both measures. Tell me a word in that problem that you don't know. It's probably going to make me cry. What does it mean for angles to be complementary? To be, they add up to be 90. I knew I was going to make me cry as a former geometry teacher. Complementary is 90. Supplementary is 180. Okay? Supplementary is 180. Complementary is 90. All right? Those are things we have to know. All right? Complementary is 90. So with that notes, write your equations. Give them a shot. Don't be afraid. Geometry is something else that we're going to kind of look into, things like that, because again, it's on the TSIA, it's on the SAT. Yeah. I taught pre-AP geometry for years and years and years. I think pre-cal is my favorite, because I've taught, what do you mean, what do I like better? Geometry or pre-cal? Is that what you're or algebra? I think pre-cal is my favorite because I've taught calculus. I've taught, I haven't taught algebra 2 that much. I taught it like 1 semester early on in my career. Same thing with algebra 1. I've taught them in summer school, but I haven't taught them in a real school year. So maybe I would like that better too. But I think overall pre-cal is my favorite. Pre-cal? Oh no. Oh no. Pre-cal's been around. AP pre-cal is what's different. It's been regular and pre-AP before. Yeah, it's not like a brand new thing. Yeah. Okay, so we've got the measure of one angle. So the measure of one angle will make that X. Is 6 more than, so that's plus 6 out here, right? Plus 6. Half the measure of the other angle. If the angles are complementary, so what does X plus Y equal? 90. Those are our equations right there. Okay. Any questions on that? Did we get at least close to that if we wrote them out? Awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and solve them. I think that, again, substitution. I'm going to take this, put it in where X is. So I'm going to get 1/2 Y plus 6, 2 terms, so it's in parentheses, plus Y equals 90. If you're not comfortable combining the Y's because of the fractions, that's okay. let's go ahead and move the 6 though. So I have 1/2 y plus y. When I subtract 6, that's going to give me 84. Then if I want to get rid of the fraction, I multiply everything by what? 2. So that means I'm going to get y plus 2y, y plus 2y equals, what's 84 times 2? 168. Good. So I've got 3y equals 168. Y equals 56, I think. And then you could substitute it back into either one you want. Which one we want to substitute it into? The second one? Okay, so x plus 56 equals 90. So 90 minus 50 is 40. Subtract another 6, you get 34. There you go. All right, what questions you got? We feeling a little bit better about this if we didn't feel great at the beginning? All right, so this is the one I was thinking about on the front, where we got 3 people. We've got Kelly, Laura, and Tia. And so you are going to end up with 3 equations. You can do whatever you want, but I would use variables K, L, and T, just because I think that makes the most sense, makes everything make the most sense. So try and write out your 3 equations. Read it a little piece at a time. I know when there's tons of words, it can make your brain hurt, but oh, maybe this isn't. Oh, it is. Yeah, it is 3. No, there's 3 equations. All right, so let's see. Kelly, Laura, and Tia sold boxes of cookies for a fundraiser. Great. First sentence gives me information, doesn't help me with my equations. So Kelly sold 15 boxes less than Laura. So Kelly's amount is 15 boxes less than Laura. So Kelly equals 15 less. We're going to do a minus 15, and that's Laura minus 15. So then I'll go, okay, Kelly sold 15 less than Laura. That makes sense. Then we move on. Tia sold twice as many boxes as Kelly. So Tia's number is 2 times Kelly's number. We good on those so far? And then if they sold 83 boxes of cookies in total, so that means K plus L in any order plus T equals 83. And we want to know how many boxes did each girl sell. So this is actually kind of an advanced system because we have 3 equations and 3 variables, but it's also very simple and very basic here. So we're going to start by substituting some stuff. And so if let's see, I know what K is. K is L minus 15. And I know what T is. And so I could put it all in this one. Or I think the first time I did it, I put this right here and I solved for T. But I have K equal and T equal. I could just put them in here. So let's start with that. So we've got K. This is L minus 15. So I'm going to replace this K with L minus 15. plus t is 2 times k. Oh, I'm sorry, then I have an L. Plus t is 2 times k. Well, I was hoping maybe, because I wanted to show you, because this can happen sometimes. I was hoping maybe that would just take care of all my variables. But guess what? I still have to put this into k right here, so I just have one variable. You with me on that? I could have done it before, or I could have done it after. Because it could have been, if Tia was based on Laura, then I'd have L's here and I'd be good. But that isn't what happened, which is, again, what could happen sometimes. So now I'm just going to put that L minus 15 in here. When I do that, now those parentheses I did on L minus 15, did they matter really? No. So I'm going to go ahead and add these two L's together. So I'm going to get 2L minus 15 plus 2 times, and then K, which is L minus 15, equals 83. Do those parentheses matter? Yes. And now everything's in L's and numbers. Okay? So I can go ahead and, let's distribute this and then simplify everything else. So 2L minus 15 plus 2L minus 30 equals 83. So that means I get 4L minus 45 equals 83. Everybody with me on that? Ask me a question if I lost you somewhere, because I did combine a couple steps, but I don't ever want to lose you when I do that. Okay. So now I'm going to add 45 to both sides, so I'm going to get 4L equals, what is it, 128? And L is equal to, if I'm going to divide by 4, I'm going to divide it in half. That gives me 64. I divide it in half again, I get 32. When the numbers get big like that, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to use a little calculator. Okay? That's L equals 32. And they asked us for each girl. So now I got to figure out the rest. Well, I got L, okay, and I know we don't have a lot of room, and I'm writing big here. If I want to figure out what K is L, which is 32, minus 15. What is 32 minus 15? 17. Very good. Then I need T. T is 2 times K, which is 17. So what did Tia do? 34. Good. Okay, good. Good job, guys. What questions do you have? All right. This has been a long class period of just working problems, okay? So we're going to stop here for today. If you want to work on the those other two that are on your worksheet that I told you to skip, you should at least be able to do 13. We'll talk about consecutive integers and stuff tomorrow and practice some more of these, okay? What questions you got? Anything? We good? Good job, guys.